I'm doing good. It's been a long day. I've just been in like back-to-back meetings and I'm ready for my first beer of the evening. So,
Oh, excellent. Excellent. What is the beer of choice?
I'm doing these Shiner light blondes these days because they're nice and refreshing in hot weather and they're just like 99 calories. Pretty great. So,
Yeah, no guilt.
exactly. Guilt-free.
Excellent. Yeah, that's some good stuff. Yeah, I'm usually into the blue moons and things like that.
I love a Blue Moon. This is really the only light beer that I drink, to be honest. I'm not like big on light beer, but these are pretty tasty. Like especially when it's hot. It gets kind of stuffy in here, and they're nice and refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, and we're all here in the South.
Yep, yep.
You're in Nashville?
No, no, I'm in outside of Austin, Texas.
Austin, okay. I'm
Yeah,
also thinking everybody I'm speaking with is from Nashville because they all have the Nashville sounds.
we usually are. So I mean, if we're not there now, we were there, or we're gonna be there in a few years. So yeah, it's a safe bet. What about you? Where are you coming from?
Atlanta, the Atlanta area. I'm
I
north of Atlanta. I'm 30 minutes north of Atlanta.
I grew up in Atlanta.
That's right. I was reading up on that. So whereabouts in Atlanta proper or just in the metro here?
Well, we were in like Avondale when I was a kid, and then at a certain point, my mom like her job like promoted her, I guess, or something good happened, and we moved to Decatur. So
Oh, yeah, that's where you get all your musical talents and gifts from, being in that cultural environment. It's wonderful in Decatur.
yeah, I loved it. It was great. I only got to be there for like 2 years, and then I moved to my dad's. So I was only there until I was like 13. I kind of wish I had been there when I was in high school because I feel like it's a totally different. All the kids that I went to elementary school with that went to like Decatur High School, they all just got a lot cooler, you know? Like they're just it's like a cool making environment, I think. And my younger brother made it through a couple of years of high school there, and I think it made him cooler. And I went to Alabama for high school, so I'm less cool now. But yeah.
So growing up in Decatur, did you get your love for music very early on? Obviously, you come from a creative family. Parents just seem to be incredibly gifted. So did you get your inspiration obviously being there and from your family as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, we were just really spoiled by being constantly surrounded by creatives and thinkers and academics. Like my mom, she's a poetry scholar, so we would have poets at the house. We would have or just other academics at Georgia State, in various disciplines. Like, and she plays music, and my dad obviously is a musician, so I grew up around all of his songwriter friends. So yeah, it was just kind of like almost like a constant. Sorry, it was like a fly. Sort of like a salon of sorts, I guess. But not in any official way, but they just had cool friends.
Yeah,
So
that had to rub off on you big time,
yeah,
just learning
yeah,
that.
yeah. And honestly, both my parents are very intelligent, interesting people, and they're like my dad's like an autodidact. I mean, he just reads constantly. He knows everything about history, and my mom is one of the most brilliant, well-educated people I've ever met. I mean, she speaks multiple languages. She's like published with the Oxford Press. So like when we were kids growing up, she would grill us on etymology and stuff, like in a nice way. And like, what's the origin of this word? Or she would take us to lots of museums. So she was just kind of constantly, I mean, we only were ever in public school, and with varying degrees of like some of the schools were great, some were but
Sure.
my mom was always supplementing, and my dad was always reading his books, and so we just kind of grew up, I think, with the benefit of that. Yeah.
Fascinating. Who do you remember anybody notable coming to your house when you were young? Any poets or
You
writers?
know, I wouldn't have known like at the time when I was 13 or younger, I'd like that they were important in any way. I wouldn't have cared if I did.
Yeah.
So probably there were, but I know that my mom, she knew a lot of people in like the sort of southern publishing, like what's the company? Is it Penguin or something?
Penguin's a
It's
pretty big publisher.
nah, that's not the one
I don't know
though.
if they're in
There's
the South here.
Algonquin. is
Yeah,
whose.
yeah.
Yeah, and she started with them. I think she was like one of their first major editors or something like that. Like she had like a pivotal role when they were getting started, and so she knew all kinds of writers and poets. Like she'd met Seamus Heaney a few times, and I know my grandfather was actually really good friends with the Yates family,
Mm,
um, which is pretty cool. I mean,
did
in
know that.
Ireland, they're like the Kennedys or something. So yeah,
Oh
but
yeah. I think I had a Yates intern with me years ago, and I'm in video production. It was just, yeah, they're just a very interesting family.
yeah.
So growing up, learning your instruments and songwriting, how early did that start for you?
I mean, maybe just because we were all surrounded by it so much, but we all were musical as kids, you know. Probably my older brother Rayvon was the one that sort of hit it. Like he wouldn't sing in front of other people, but um, you know, we all took lessons at various points in time. And George and I took piano, and we just would constantly like I remember sitting around the piano with my brother George, and he was really great at piano and just really quick with it, and he would play like Beatles songs, you know, When I'm 64 and stuff, and we would just sing all the harmonies. And yeah, I mean, it was a thing. It was just kind of constant. So,
Was it Beatles and people in that genre who inspired you, or who else was inspiring you when you were growing up here?
well, when we were little, we just listened to whatever our parents listened to.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, and my mom loved the Beatles. We had the Beatles, and she loved the Indigo Girls. That was her favorite band. So, you know, grew up just idolizing them. Also, you know, they're from Decatur, and so they were the Beatles to me. You know what I mean?
Nice.
And they are the Beatles to me. And so I grew up with that. And for my on my dad's side, it was a lot of singer-songwriter stuff and really the folk kind of world. So, you know, Dylan and people like that. Um, Jesse Winchester, or, you know, Mark Hurd, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's what we grew up listening to over there. And then when my stepmom came into the picture, she's a little bit younger than my dad. So she brought an influx of like late 80s, early 90s rock, which was awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, spice
Got
things
a
up a
nice
bit.
cross section.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, when I was a kid in Atlanta, most of my friends for a couple years there when I was really little were black. And so I listened to what they were listening to, which meant that I was a really big R&B fan. I listened to a lot of hip hop, and I got into jazz through a piano teacher. So I liked divas. Like I liked women with big voices. That was what I was really drawn to. Yeah.
It makes you really strong, and you could see that in all of your work.
Well, thank you.
Now, flash forwarding now to your latest release, Working Woman, your idols you got to really get close with, Indigo Girls, you worked on the track with. That had to be totally fascinating.
Oh my god. Yeah, I've like talked to a couple people about it now, and I still don't know how it happened really. Like I know the mechanics of it, and Rachel Sage, who runs the label, you know, she reached out and sort of through some back channels, and it all happened, and they said yes somehow miraculously and just generously.
Awesome.
Um, but yeah, yeah, I called my mom, and she just screamed on the phone for like 5 minutes. Like it was said some cuss words she doesn't normally say. You know, it was great. And we both just kind of we're both just. I mean, the first song that I ever sang on stage, I was 11, was "Power of Two," and my mom played the guitar, and I sang it, and she sang the harmonies. It was for a talent show, so that it's like my love for them like runs really deep, and it's a big part of, you know, I guess my identity growing up. And
It's
yeah.
amazing how that's come full circle for
Yeah,
you. And wow, these legends are now working with you. Now
it's
it's on a
crazy.
track called the track is called Landon
Landon, yeah,
on your new album.
my new
And
record.
how did that come together? Did they come into the studio with you, or was it piece its parts? You did it live with them?
Unfortunately, they did not come into the studio. I heard from Mary Bragg that they recorded in Atlanta, which is very cool because it means I have a little piece of Atlanta on this record. We recorded the core record with the core band in Nashville in 3 days, but all of the special guests flew in their parts. So the rest of the record was done, you know, on site but the guests, so the Indigo Girls, you know, Ruthie Foster, everybody else, they flew in all of those tracks, and Mary and our brilliant engineer Shani Gandhi mixed and massaged and made it all work. But it wasn't hard because they sent us amazing, amazing stuff. And in the case of the Indigo Girls, like they crafted those parts. Those are, you know, they didn't need direction. Like they heard it, they came up with that part, and they really created. Honestly, the song is so different with their. It's not backup harmony. I mean, you know how unique their harmonies are.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
if you're a fan, and they're just there's something like really organic and intuitive. It feels intuitive, but also like unexpected about the way that they craft harmonies. And I don't know how they do it, but it's almost like they turned it into a call and response. And that whole like land and like that line, and then there's the
Mhm.
response to it, that didn't exist in the song. Like the only chorus was the response part. So they kind of changed the entire chorus of the song, which blows my mind, you know, because you got to have a lot of confidence. But you know what? They were right. And it's way better with that. It's a million times better, obviously. And the minute that I heard them like doing that, it was in this little trailer studio, and Mary sent me the roughs, and I just like wept. Like I just,
Yeah.
you know, because it was almost like I was in the Indigo Girls for a minute, you know,
Yeah.
and it just also the emotional kind of catharsis of it all, like with what the song is about, and you know their story growing up in the South in the same town that I grew up in, and you know Landon's story growing up in a small town in Alabama, and just the way that everything comes around. It was a moment, you know.
Yeah, totally fascinating having musical veterans like that. And they're such geniuses just being able to come out and add so much more. And I've seen the stripped down acoustic version you've done.
Yeah,
And yeah, it gives it
night and
so,
day. Yeah,
yeah,
night and day. Yeah, it's amazing.
great new album. It's called Working Woman. The title track is says it all right there. It seems to be there's a huge story behind that and how it builds up to the theme of this album and the title track especially, and the video is fantastic too.
Thank you. Thank you
So
so much.
this whole project produced by Mary Bragg. For
Mhm.
those who aren't familiar with Mary Bragg, what is Mary Bragg's background?
Oh man, she's just one of these annoying people that does everything perfectly. You know, like she sings,
People.
like her voice is, you know, this once in a generation singing voice, and she writes just as well. You know, she's among the best writers that I know. And she's an incredible producer. She has all the producer chops, you know, she's familiar with all the gear. She's made a couple records now and she's really great at it. And she also brings all of that like knowledge and intuition as a writer and as a singer combined with her production skill. And on top of all that, she's just a really nice human. She's just a good person and she's good vibes all day. And she shows up in the studio and it just makes you happy. You want to work, you want to like it's so important to set a good vibe in the studio. Like it's so much more important than people think. And you feel welcome, you feel safe, you feel like, you know,
That's
just
what a
but
good producer does. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Really makes it a home for you, whether you need a special carpet under you or the special mics. I read a book about Phil Ramone, producer who'd done so many other acts over the years, and he was talking about that. It's called Making Records, and
Mm,
it really is. It's so important to the artist
so
to
important.
really, really cater to that. And
Yeah, absolutely. And just like to the entire session. Like from, you know, the engineer behind the console to Skylar who was like setting up mics and stuff to, you know, the players obviously like making sure that because there's a collective spirit. Yeah, and you know this, like when you put any number of people in a room, the personality of the room changes based on who's in it. It takes on its own kind of collective personality. And that happens in a session. So it's really important that the person in charge is like setting that tone and helping to like foster that kind of connection that happens because that's when the magic happens, like when there's that communication and that conversation between players. It's like that's the stuff that you can plan and plan and plan and plan, but just in the moment, like that magic either happens or it doesn't. And it's pretty cool.
So lyric wise with your title track, how did you come up with all that? How long did that take? And obviously very inspired by Strong Women.
Yeah. Like I wrote that song back in 2013 or something. And well before the Me Too movement or any of the
Mhm.
national conversation about kind of giving a shit about women again, I guess. Um, which is a cyclical thing, like we pay attention and then we don't, and then we do again. And it's, you just kind of, but it's not cyclical for women. It's our lives, and when I was writing the song, I was thinking about my mom and just all the things that she's had to overcome in her own career. Um, and, it's, I don't know. It's a blunt song. It's not. I think that country was the right vehicle for it because it's not subtle. It's which doesn't mean sometimes people think that because something is simple that it doesn't have meaning, but um, sometimes you just need to say something in a simple, blunt way, and I felt like that was the case for that song. Like it needed to be said without any kind of hedging or apology. And it's really not asking for respect. It's demanding respect. Um, I don't think we should be asking anymore.
Oh yeah.
I think we're past that. So yeah, that was really like where the song came from. And then it's just funny how you wear a song like a shirt or something, and you just as you wear it, you kind of break it in, and you get comfortable with it on you, and you find your own way into it. You know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
as an expression of yourself. So I think I wrote something that was bigger than me when I wrote it, and Ruthie Foster covered it first, and so it took me a minute to kind of find my own way back into it, I guess. But yeah, yeah.
Beautiful video too, and you
Thank
had
you.
really good direction. They list a lot of the women who appear in this video. They show a lot of strong women in this video.
Mm.
Were these women that you chose, or was this by the director? A little bit.
Um, they're all like friends of either mine or the directors. Mostly my friends, a couple of hers, and there's one person, the nurse. So I have a nurse friend who is camera shy and did not want to be in the video, but she recommended one of her coworkers. So the nurse is not someone that I knew personally, but everybody else is either a friend of mine or a friend of the directors, and we didn't want actors. Like we just wanted real women like doing the jobs that they just do in their lives. So yeah, that's what we wanted a kind of a good cross section. We had talks about wanting it to be inclusive and diverse, and also to include some of those jobs that we really think of as like the Rosie the Riveters of our time. So nurses, teachers, like moms, like there were a few of those jobs that we really wanted to make sure we got, because there's the glamorous stuff,
Oh, sure.
the chef Joe Chan, like so cool,
Yeah.
such a cool job. But there's also a lot of jobs that aren't that cool that women are doing in our society, and we're doing most of those jobs, to be honest. So yeah,
Yeah.
it just kind of it felt like important to include some of those as well.
Yeah, the timing was really great. Even though you started this several years ago, it's funny. You must have a lot of songs where you have it in your back pockets and you kind of dust it off. Yeah,
Yeah, it was awesome. They don't expire. I always tell this to like songwriters. It's like just hang on to it, and write the next 10 because they don't go bad. And maybe it's not the right song for this moment, but maybe next year will be that song's moment, or maybe another artist. It's perfect for them. So, yeah, just hang on to them.
doesn't have that expiration date, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have a ritual before you go into the studio or on stage? Are there certain rituals that you go through to really get yourself into the moment?
Yes. Well, I often put on makeup and do my hair. So if I'm backstage or maybe that morning, if they don't have like a mirror backstage or whatever, whenever I'm doing that, I'll have Star Trek on, and I watch Star Trek whenever
Really?
I'm, yeah. So if I'm going through like my morning routine or my evening routine, like if I'm in front of a mirror, I have Star Trek on my phone. Um, it's my favorite, and it's just a way to kind of center myself. It's a show about making sense of things, and so I find that helpful. Yeah,
Very interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
What iteration of Star Trek? The original TV series, all the movies, all of the above?
I just kind of work my way through, starting at the beginning. So I'm currently in Next Generation right now, but I'm also doing a lot of the original series, watching of the original series in my life right now because I have a podcast and I interview my friends and we talk about Star Trek. So I'm working my way through TOS, the original series, doing that as well. But in my own personal viewing, I'm in Next Gen right now.
Right. I had no, that's really amazing though. Here you are into making music and you have a podcast on Star Trek.
Yeah.
I think that probably adds to the dimension, but I like that it's kind of part of that ritual that gets you in the mood to record.
I mean, I think anything familiar is helpful on the road or in the studio, you know. So like playing your own guitar, you know,
Yeah.
sleeping on your own pillow, calling your husband after the gig. It's just like those little things that kind of anchor you to some kind of consistency are always nice. Yeah.
When did you discover Star Trek? When you were very young, growing up, just like it was always there for you, or more recent?
You know, so I watched it a little when I was a kid because my mom and her partner Rick, it's his fault. He's the one that brought it into my life. But he was a huge fan, and before him, my mom didn't have a television in the house. Like she did not want us watching TV. I mean, she's an English professor, so she was
Sure.
like books. And you know, this is the '90s when there were all those ads about TV, just like rotting your brain and stuff. So yeah, she was just like no television in my house. And then she started dating Rick, and Rick was a huge Star Trek fan, and he was like, "We have to have a TV in the house. Like we can put it in the basement, but I need to be able to watch my Star Trek every week." So this is the golden era of like '90s Trek. It was like Next Generation, Voyager, Deep
Huh.
Space Nine. So they would have it on, but it would always be past my bedtime. And my brother Rayvon, who was a couple years older, would sometimes get to stay up and like watch a little bit of it, but I was like too young for it. So I would kind of hear it and see like bits and pieces of it. I wasn't super interested in it. Um, I thought Riker was cute, you know? And then a few years later in college, I just on a whim, I don't even remember why, I started watching like the original series, the 60s version. I think just because it had like popped up on Netflix for the first time or something. And I just got really into it just very quickly. Just was all about it. The hairdos and, you know, Kirk's whole thing. Spock, you know, just like the whole, just, you know, this character in two worlds and that whole thing. And all the kind of like cultural commentary of it in the 60s, which was such a cool time in American history. And so yeah, I just got really sucked in really quick and ended up like finding myself on these like Wikipedia rabbit holes where I was like trying to figure out like what actor played what thing. And from there, I just, you know, I was like, all right. And so then I watched Next Generation, you know, and love it. Like, love it. And that's probably my favorite of the series. And I watched, you know, all of it at that point and just like binged. And from then on, it's really been something that I watch a lot of. I didn't really talk about it for a while because I felt like there weren't a lot of Trekkies that I had a lot in common with, and which was wrong, by the way. I was very
Oh,
wrong about that.
it's
But
a
I,
culture. Yeah, totally.
yeah, but I at the time I was like, well, you know,
Yeah.
it's just like you have expectation about who a Trekkie is supposed to be, and I was like, I don't fit this, so they must all be dudes in basements, and I don't have anything in common with them. And like, yeah, it was a little snobby, and then you know, I kind of also didn't talk about it because it wasn't cool. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like being into Marvel or something. It wasn't like a cool nerddom. So if I'm honest about it, it took me a couple of years to like own it. And then, you know, Betty Sue and Rebecca knew that I was really into it. My band Nobody's Girl, and they started talking about it on stage.
That's hilarious.
Um, as just kind of like because we did this sort of segment where we like mentioned a couple fun facts about each of the members of the band, and they started talking about it on stage. And so then Trekkies started coming up and talking to me during the break, and we'd be like in this like rapt discussion about like Klingon ambassadors or whatever, and like, you know, so it kind of introduced me to like the wider community of Star Trek lovers, which is a really cool community of people. and I love them all because they just love something passionately and they don't care what anyone else thinks about it. You
Yeah,
know,
that's very true.
it's so refreshing. They just like what they like. And it's not like there's no cultural currency to any of it. Like it's just, they just like what they like. And I was like, cool, I want to hang with people like that. So I've made a lot more Star Trek fan friends. And something really cool now is like at shows and things, people will like give me stuff sometimes, you know, like bags or like, you know, enamel pens or books or, you know, just whatever. So I've picked up a lot of cool swag that way, to be honest.
Yeah, growing up, I just had the independent station where I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and they had Star Trek. It was the first time I ever saw them do a marathon of anything, and it was
Mm,
Star Trek. And they went through, I remember Trouble with Tribbles. That was like,
yeah,
that's what they
it's a
had.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really, nowadays with our technology, gosh, you can call up any episodes of any of the series. It's exploded ever since the 1979 original motion picture. It
Hmm.
has just collectively, just the franchise has just really grown. And
So you're a fan, clearly, if you're calling up Star Trek 1 in 1979. Like,
go back to the original series when I was young. I
yeah.
think I was into the original motion picture. I was a kid
Did
when
you
that.
like it? Even with the
And I like
danger stuff?
I
You thought it was good?
I thought it was really amazing for what it was at the time. I was only like
Yeah,
12 when it was released. So
I
I was
can
like,
see that.
wow, this is on the big screen, something adapted from TV to the big screen. I thought that was really
That is
interesting.
cool. Yeah.
I think after Wrath of Khan, I got a little bit more into a lot of other stuff. But
Dude, I love Wrath of Khan. That's to me, that's the best of
yeah,
all of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the 80s hairdos and William Shatner's 80s hairdo wig, whatever that is.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, and like 80s Khan is so great. You know, he reminds me of David Bowie from Labyrinth. You know,
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
a,
yeah,
like a
yeah.
similar vibe. You know.
My time.
It's a great movie. It's a really good movie. It holds up.
It does. It really all does. That's fantastic. So, the new release is out, and are you getting radio play with Working Woman? Is it really just getting out there in the culture? Have you been getting a lot of pre-orders so far?
Yeah, yeah. We've actually had kind of a remarkably good response to it, you
Yeah,
know, and it helps that I have a real team for the first time. I've got like PR and I've got a great radio guy and a label behind it. And um, it's kind of like I woke up one day and all the pieces were in place, you know? So there's a team really working it. And we've gotten some great stuff. The radio stuff is just starting to like take off. So we'll kind
good.
of see how that goes, but it's been going great so far. Um, I just the music video was just featured on CMT Music, which was very cool. And Diddy TV, and we had a write up in the boot, and so yeah, we'll see what radio thinks. It'll be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, country definitely. And that's why I was always thinking, you could really be huge in Nashville. I'm sure that's just a very big culture there and how that could fit in. And you can get more work in Nashville. I'm sure it's,
Yeah, maybe. I tried it one time. I think I hit it the wrong year though, because it was like the year of bro country, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
just like the
That's
polar
like,
opposite from what I do. So I think it just, you know, they didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what to do with them, and I left after like a year. But it seems like it's changing a little now, and you know, it's like I love country music. I grew up listening to that, and I'm from Alabama and Georgia, and like I come by it honestly. And when I write, I find myself writing like country and folk songs. It's just like the vernacular that I am familiar with as a Southern girl. But at the same time, like culturally, country is kind of conservative. And sometimes I think about it and I'm like, if I was on stage at one of those county fairs, like
yeah.
what would happen? And I don't honestly know. Like I don't know if people would want to buy the CD. Like I don't know if I would offend them because I'm pretty liberal and I'm not shy about it. So sometimes it's a little strange because it's I don't know, but I do think that there is this like smaller subsection of country music fans in the South, especially my age and younger, that are kind of tired of the same material in every song. They're kind of looking, they're wanting to talk about the world that they live in
Yeah.
music, and they're maybe not hearing it, and they're maybe not seeing themselves represented on stage. And so, yeah, I would love to be a part of that, you know, the new South. And
Yeah, it's interesting bedfellows with, being definitely somewhat left of center. I think Dixie Chicks kind of go back to that in the time
mm,
that they were in. That was a really rough time.
yeah,
But God, they made so much, history shows that they were on the good side of history. It's just kind of,
just saying, yeah.
people just tend to forget. And I talk about this a lot with my girlfriend as well. It's like people forget those years and
Mm-hmm.
really how off the charts things really were politically and culturally. And obviously the last 5, 6 years, it's kind of like put that all on the back pages.
I know.
You forget that.
It's like Bush is like this nice, sweet old man just like painting veterans now. It's so
Yeah.
strange. It's, it's such a weird reality we've all been living in for the past 4 years, but like nothing made any sense,
There
So,
was just that mob mentality, which we saw on January 6th of this year. But back then, there was such a mob mentality with them crushing the Dixie Chick CDs,
yeah.
at events. I'm like, really?
I
This
mean,
is the first time.
I feel like so much of it is just tribalism. It's
Yeah.
just like this us versus them kind of mentality that we have. Um, there's a lot of racism, frankly, in the South and country music, and there's a lot of sexism. There's a lot of all the isms. Um, but I think also more than that, there's just tribalism. There's just people saying like, well, we're this group, and we're us, and you're them, and if you're not us, then we don't want you. So it's, and I don't think that that really reflects like the the spirit of the South that I grew up in, which was a really warm, welcoming place. I mean, yes, there were problems, but people are kind, people are
Yeah.
polite, people are, it's, I grew up with really nice people, and in welcoming places, people that would feed you or help you fix your tire on the side of the road. And so I think I just want to get back to that. Like I just want us to remember who we were before they pitted us against each other. And I don't know. I think that's the thing that's really, it's hurting us. But it's, I say that, but there maybe never was a time when that wasn't happening. I mean, even if you think about like the origins of country music and folk music,
Oh, sure.
it's songs written by, people for people. But, the thing that divides it is politics. It's politics. I mean, it's mostly white music for one thing, all of it. But, folk music is like leans left, and it sort of challenges convention, and it's playing protest songs, and it's asking you why we're at war. And then like country music is talking about your work day or your dog or your wife left you or whatever, and it's reminding you of the things that everybody knows. So it's, on the one hand you have kind of challenging things, and then on the other hand you have sort of affirming common truth. And both of those things are important for our experience of life. It's not like we should just do all one thing at the expense of the other. Like, but we need all of that in the conversation, and just in general, just to be good people. So I think it'd be great if we could I don't know,
Hopefully.
if we
Yeah.
didn't have to pick a side, like if you could just play country and folk, if you could listen to both, if you could have both kinds of fans at your audience, like that's, I would love to have that. And I think I really did have that before 2016, and then
Yeah.
it just went out the window and everybody had to pick a team.
And it's
So
only really gotten more intense. It's not gone away, even though there's been a change in administration in Washington. It's still 74 million people did vote for the other side, and a good handful of them don't believe in the results of what that election was.
I know
So
it.
it's
Yeah.
going to take time. And, that's a lot of stuff, obviously, to mention and write to as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think too, like the whole circus of it, I think sometimes distracts from like the really important issues that should just be things that we can all come together on. And I think maybe in other eras we would have, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe that's like maybe this is like the Star Trek fan in me, just like thinking optimistically about humanity and like wanting us to eventually come together. But like, like can't we all just say racism is really wrong, and
Yeah.
Can't we all watch that video, um,
Yeah.
and say, okay, Derek Chauvin, like he did the thing and he should be in jail. Like there's just shit, and I think we did for a second, for like a minute, as a country, we all were horrified looking at our smartphones, and it lasted like 60, or it lasted as long as that video lasted,
Sure.
and then as soon as that was over, we had to scroll to Fox News or CNN so that someone could tell us how we were allowed to feel about it, you
Yeah.
know?
It's still that tribalism, pick a team.
And it's like, let's go back to when we were all horrified and we're like, this is wrong. Because if we can just hang on to that, we can really change some things. If we just forget about the other things for a minute and just focus not on like the tribes, but on the issues, like women should have paid, leave. This is a thing that we all want in this
Yeah.
country. So why can't we make that happen?
Yeah.
And I think there are things like that if we just kind of came together and had a conversation about the issues instead of the sides,
Hmm.
that maybe we could get somewhere. But again, it's me being naive, maybe. I don't know.
I know it could kind of make you feel that way, but you're trying to think beyond that and think outside the box. And it could be so difficult these days, especially with the pandemic going on and how that all got politicized.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect example of something that
Uh,
should have been common sense.
yeah.
That I mean, my grandfather's brother was one of the people. He coined the phrase "arrive alive" in Florida about
Yeah.
seatbelts. That was his. He came up with that,
Yeah.
and that was my great uncle. And he, and it was like a slogan, and the point was to change public opinion because people were really resistant to seatbelts. People didn't like them. People like to
Sure.
just slide around in their bucket seats in their trucks or whatever. And like the government was like, no, actually, maybe your kids won't die if you wear seatbelts. And they were like, I don't know about all the seatbelt thing. And they came up with this slogan, "Arrive Alive," and it was catchy and it stuck, and the culture changed, and now everybody wears seatbelts.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like that just makes me go, or cigarettes or whatever. Like we can change our minds about things, like and masks should have been that cut and dry. And it should every politician on the planet should have been, and honestly, in every other country they did, but every politician should have just put on a mask and said, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like during wartime or something, like this is your
Right.
duty as an American. So it really shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been hard. It isn't hard.
No.
Um, but we made it tribal. You know.
And that's why these numbers have been ticking up so much. And finally, now we're seeing rounding that curve, and the vaccines are out, and that's going to take time. It really will, and hopefully, we'll be there. We went through it. We went through World War II, and
Yeah.
we had to come together that way. And
Yep.
it's harder these days. Definitely more partisan, definitely more tribal and everything like that. But we'll come out of that hopefully.
I remember, there was some politician in Texas. I don't even remember which one now, but it was, back like a year
So
ago when all this started, and they were saying like, well, our elders wouldn't want us to shut down. They would rather sacrifice themselves so that their grandkids have an economic future or some shit like
the
that. And
lieutenant governor was, yeah.
yeah, Dan Patrick is one of them. Anyway,
Ugh.
so, and I just remember thinking like, it made me so angry because I was thinking about my own grandparents, all of whom have passed away now, but both my grandfathers fought in World War II. They were both in the Navy, and my grandmother, like, she did things till the day she died, like she saved tinfoil
Yeah.
because during wartime you saved tinfoil, and my mom's mother sewed all of their clothes their entire childhood because she just got in the habit. They were like thrifty, and they were, considerate, and they were, civic minded, and just they cared about other people besides themselves, and they had this kind of selfless. Now there were problems. I mean, there was lots of racism and terrible stuff happening. Obviously we needed second wave feminism. Like there were problems. I'm not saying we should go back to that time, but there is something really noble about that generation in the way that they sacrificed for others, and just the way that my generation and above, in between me and them, just didn't care about them and threw them away.
Yeah,
Like
it's
they didn't matter. And it made me really angry because they cared about everybody else and they needed us to care about them. And we didn't. And a lot of them died.
yeah.
And
That
we're
is,
going to have to reckon with that for a while.
those wounds will hopefully heal. Definitely. So you must miss playing live. The pandemic has been raging on, I'm sure. You've been playing live, obviously, for many, many years in your young life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it's probably been a little while
It's
now.
been 10 years, it's been a minute. Yeah, it's been really hard not playing shows. And I have the first few on the calendar again. As of
Good.
very recently. I still feel super weird about it,
Yeah, I
because
know.
I don't know what things will look like in a month, but we're at a 25% vaccinated, so I'm just kind of hoping. It's like a gamble, like you're kind of betting that things will be good enough and that only vaccinated people will come, and you just kind of hope that that's true. And I don't know. I'm on the fence about it. I go back and forth every day. I kind of change my mind. But even today, I've really been wrestling with it. But it also feels like if I don't book the shows, then I have to. The way booking works is you have to plan a couple months
And, yeah.
in advance, at least, if not 6 months to a year. So we've got to get them on the calendar first, and then figure it out when we get there. And it's really just a day by day thing. But yeah, I'm really hopeful. I feel hopeful for the first time in a long time, which is a
Great.
weird feeling.
It is. It's got to be. But what type of venues? Are you mainly indoors, outdoors, a little of both of that too?
Well, all through 2020, I did not play indoors, with the exception of one new venue that had like a state of the art air circulation filtration
Yeah.
system, and they were doing everything else right, and it felt like safe enough. But all of 2020, with except for that gig, I played outside 16 feet from the audience and masked, as in me masked, in a singer's mask, and them masked, and all of them 6 feet away, and very strict rules. And only played because of that. Only played a couple shows. I mostly said no to like everything. Um, but I'm fortunate because my husband has a job. He lost his job at the start of COVID and he got another one quickly. So
Mhm.
he has that. I had some extra income from my publishing company. And over the past few months, I've been able to build a little more income on Patreon and through webcasts. So I have the privilege and the luxury of being able to say no to a lot of things
Good.
that a lot of my friends have not been able to say no to because they have rent to pay. And a lot of them have gotten COVID.
Ugh.
So, it just
Mm.
is what it is. But I was all outdoors, and then I have now been double vaccinated. I've been volunteering, so I got vaccinated a little earlier. And yeah, so it feels like it's now that we have the research that we have that's showing that most of the spread is coming from unvaccinated people and that vaccinated people really aren't spreading the virus.
Yeah.
I feel like I can be 6 feet from the crowd instead of 16 feet or 20 feet or whatever. So I don't feel like I necessarily have to wear a mask anymore when I sing. I still wear it when I'm off the stage,
Yeah.
but it's sort of, I'm just constantly like, adjusting and tweaking. And I never know if I'm doing the right thing. I never know. Cause part of me is like, I really want to support these venues and I really don't want to encourage people to come out and be a public menace. So like, I just, it's tough, it's hard to know what the right thing to do is. And I'm all about trying to do the right thing in my life. So it's been difficult for me, but in other ways, I feel like it's been really easy for me. So yeah.
So a typical show nowadays, what's in your set list? You go back, you got a back catalog as well, going back to what, 2008, 2009, in that area?
Yeah, yeah. I think my first record came out 2009. So, yeah, it goes back a ways. And there's most of the songs I've written have not been recorded. There's like a couple hundred of them. So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's
I,
really amazing.
yeah, I kind of make a conscious effort to play the recorded stuff so that I can sell the records.
Sure, absolutely.
Um,
And they're out there. Yeah, why not? That should be in your set list, definitely.
right, right. And usually the songs I record are some of my favorites. So, I'll try to work those in. But I always like to do at least one or two new things or something I haven't played in a while just to keep it fresh, for myself so I don't get bored.
Oh, absolutely. Ruthie Foster is another artist that
Yeah.
you seem to admire quite a bit on the new album as well. What was
Yes.
that track like having Ruthie on?
Well, she's, she's one of my heroes. And when I first moved to town, I was still a teenager, and I went to her show. It was one of the first shows I went to moving to Austin. And I sold CDs for her. And the minute she opened her mouth, and she's kind of a little person,
Oh, really?
but she's not that tall, but she just opens her mouth and it's like she's 20 feet tall, like, and she just sings to the back of the room, and just the like energy that she has is it just kind of takes over the room. Like everybody just is sort of spellbound, and you feel it like in your entire body, um and a lot of it is her instrument, but it's also like her spirit coming through that instrument, you know? And it's all just this experience that like you really can't understand unless you've seen her live. And everybody that's seen her live that's hearing this is like, yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, the records are amazing, but there's nothing like seeing her live. So yeah, I just have been a huge fan for a while. And then in 2017, she covered two of my songs, which was right at the right time for me because I was kind of edging out of my 20s, and was thinking about, you know, going back to grad school. Like things had sort of
Hmm.
come to a standstill for me for the past few years. Didn't look like anything was really happening in my career, and maybe it should be a thing that I do on the weekends for fun. It was like that was where I was at with it. So, her covering two of my songs and then singing my praises literally all over town, and it changed the trajectory of my entire career. And it led to a lot of really great opportunities for me. Around that time, I started the band Nobody's Girl with Rebecca Loby and Betty Sue. And I'm not saying that was the reason that happened, but maybe I wouldn't have been on Rebecca's radar. You know what I mean? But my name was like in the air. And, it led to an affiliation with the Buddy Holly Educational Foundation. A guy there, Steve Easley, who's been a friend and a fan for a lot of years, he had an excuse to talk me up to them, which led to me going on a retreat through them. That led to me getting connected with BMG, which led to a publishing deal. And then all of that kind of led into a record deal, which I impressed Empress like in 2019 because of all that. And that led to me signing with Empress in January of 2020. Which led to this record being made, which would not have been made if I didn't have a label paying for it in the COVID era.
Sure.
And it definitely wouldn't have been made this way with this much freedom and vision behind it. And so, Ruthie's really like, she was the catalyst for all of these things that kind of ended and resulted in this record being made. So having her sing on the record was something I knew I wanted from pre-production. Like it was just something that I really, really wanted. And we asked her, and she's a friend now, which is crazy to say. We even write together and stuff. But I still wasn't sure she was going to say yes because she's busy. She's a busy friend, and she's an important friend. And and she was recording her own stuff at the time, and she still made time
Yeah, that's nice.
and sent in these harmonies, and like, yeah, just the generosity of that. But she's always been that way. She's just the most amazing person. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a track called "Pick Me Up."
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you compose, write most of these songs? You did lyrics, melody as well, or you had some collaboration on this too?
Yeah, I wrote all the songs on the record. There's a couple co-writes. There are two, in fact, and this is one of them. The co-writer is a friend, Megan Burt, in Colorado. Although I think is she in New York now? I forget. It's been
Yeah,
like a
it's
year
still hard to
since I've
keep
seen
track.
anybody. Yeah, but yeah, she's an incredible songwriter. We've written a lot of songs, maybe 7 or 8 songs, and this is, I think, the latest. This is the latest one that we've written. So yeah, it's a cool song. My other collaborators are Haynes Scott and Nicole Dean, and I wrote "Never Get It Back" with them. And they're two friends of mine in Pensacola, Florida. So
Oh, nice. Was
yeah,
that just released as a single before this album's coming out? Was that one of your lead singles?
yeah, that was the second lead single from the record. Was "Never Get It Back." It's a cool song.
Yeah, it
Really
really
proud of
catchy,
it.
very catchy.
It
I mean,
just came out so cool in the studio.
totally. Yeah, you have some great artists who are helping you out, and in production wise too. How long did this from start to finish did the album take?
I mean, we recorded the thing in 3 days.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, it was, very old school, very like Nashville. You go in a room. And that was kind of the point was, yeah, I definitely had a chip on my shoulder and something to prove with this record, which is that we can do this too, we meaning women. And all those great records that you heard, they were made that way. They just put a band in a room in a couple days and came out with a record. And I was like, let's do that. So that's what we did. And then we kind of flew in the special guest parts. Because of COVID, the special guests were kind of all over the country. So we flew in their vocals, but the band, me, drums, bass, guitar, lead guitar, keys, we just recorded it all in 3 days. Pre-production was maybe 3 months of talking on the phone with Mary Bragg and just really digging deep into the songs, into the story we wanted to tell, thinking about like the bigger picture of the record. And yeah, we're both really kind of deep thinkers. I think it's a songwriter thing, but we got really into that. So yeah, we spent a lot of time in pre-production and 3 days in the studio.
Yeah, sometimes it's just better to be more spontaneous rather than sitting there overthinking everything, dissecting everything, recording, re-recording
Oh
over
yeah,
times.
I definitely think that's true. I mean, it's like the necessity is the mother of invention thing. I think it's good to go in with a plan, but you have to be open to things happening in the moment, like because they do, and that's part of the magic of it. And I think that having some parameters for yourself, like okay, like we have these 3 days. This is our start time. This is our end time. Having like a budget, that is set is a really helpful thing. I don't know how musicians record, the ones that are also producers that record their own records at their homes. I'm like, I would I would obsess for
Yeah.
like years and it would never be done. And I need that kind of structure and but then within that structure the freedom to be creative and to find things that you don't anticipate. So it's a little bit of both. It's my grandmother always used to say like you can spend an hour in front of the mirror getting
Right.
ready. But the minute you walk out the door, stop thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
You-
think that it's very much that. It's like you spend all this time planning to get the right people in the room and to make it happen and then you have to just be in the moment and not be thinking about all the prep that went into it. So,
Yeah, I would think like as you get older, you're more confident, and I think some of these veteran performers have no problem doing something like totally at home. Paul McCartney comes to mind very quickly because he did it
yeah,
halfway. He did it all himself, and
it's
it's like
insane.
he's a genius. I mean,
He's a genius. Yeah, yeah.
but there's so much confidence because this is like more than a half century of work. So there's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like I know what I'm doing. It's just like then you look at Indigo Girls who
Yeah.
completely transformed your track.
And they're the Beatles and the Indigo Girls. So, I mean, that's, yeah. They have yeah. There's a certain amount of swagger that I'm sure you acquire when you're at that level of genius and, you know, the impression that you've made on the culture with your art. Like
Totally.
it's got to
So,
make you just a little more confident, I would hope.
yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely are comfortable in their own skins. There's no question about that. How
Yeah.
are you on these streaming services? How do you feel about that and how that's been working for you?
I mean, I'm grateful that they exist, and I'm grateful
Yeah,
it's allowed me to like connect with my tribe and the people that have supported me in my music for many years. It's not the same as singing to them in person, but it's so much better than nothing, and it really got me through a lot of tough months in 2020. Just having that kind of connection with people and feeling like what I did had any kind of value was enormously important for me and for a lot of musicians, I think. So I don't want to you know, I don't want to talk smack about it, but I will say like my favorite thing is just like being in a bar and just like letting loose and singing loud and having drums, and just like lead guitar. And I hardly ever get that. I can't usually afford my band, but when I get to do that, that's when I feel the most alive. And I usually get to do it a couple times a month, and I haven't been able to do it in a year. So I really, really miss that. I miss being on the road with Rebecca and Betty Sue, my other band. I miss singing harmonies with them. I haven't sung harmony with anybody in like a year. Um, I miss hearing music and like the other people on the bill, and I miss house concerts. I miss like the intimate stuff too. That's just up close and personal with other humans. I mean, I just seeing people's faces.
Yeah.
I miss seeing people's faces. I never really realized how much a part of what I do that is. But because it doesn't feel like a conversation when I'm the one with the mic. So
Yeah.
in some ways it's like it's one way and it's broadcast, but in a live show you're the room takes on a personality, and you're seeing people's expressions, and you're connecting with people over the merch table, and there's that kind of like human element to it that it's I miss that, I really do.
Mhm. Yeah, hopefully we see you here in Atlanta at Decatur, to be more specific, at Eddie's
Yeah.
Attic.
Yeah. Yeah, I played there for a lot of years. I know Eddie, so Eddie's migrated to the Red Clay,
Yes,
and
near where I live,
that is where I'm going to be playing,
Good.
God willing, and the creek don't rise, for my release show there in Atlanta, which is in June the 25th, I believe,
Oh,
at the
good.
Red Clay. So yeah, I'll be
Excellent.
really happy to be there. Eddie is kind of like an uncle. I grew up at Eddie's Attic and was
Yeah.
babysat by the bartenders basically. So when Eddie migrated, I did too, and yeah, I'm a Red Clay girl now.
Sweet. And that's in downtown Duluth.
That's
That's
right.
where I'm at. It's a great little theater here. I give those guys a plug. Eddie's Attic, Red Clay.
Oh yeah, and they're great people. I'm just I go where Eddie goes, so that's.
I've
I
done
still think the Attic's great. I think it's great that they're there. I've played there with my band Nobody's Girl a couple times, so
Oh, cool.
yeah. But yeah, as for me, all of the Pettises, in fact, my dad, both my brothers are musicians. Like we all kind of followed Eddie over because he's like family. He's like an honorary Pettis, so.
Eddie Owen presents. He's a legend here. I've been here many, many years, well over 3 decades in the Atlanta area. So I'm very familiar with that, and have done a lot of work over at Eddie's Attic. I've covered a lot of artists who've played over there. So I love the opportunity I love what he's done for this community. Definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember like, well, when I was a kid, that's where I grew up, was just hanging out there, and
That's
saw John
incredible.
Mayer there. Like it's
Oh,
just,
wow.
but Eddie, like he gave my dad shows, when he was just starting out and when he was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. Like he supported my dad. He gave him gigs and helped him start his career, and like that stuff. That's you don't forget that. Like
Yeah, you don't forget who, yeah,
you
you're
don't forget that. So yeah,
excellent.
but
Excellent.
it's crazy. When I went back the other last time I was there, it was so strange. It's like all these memories came flooding back. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. What a great place to be in Decatur, Georgia. It's fantastic.
yeah, right at the right time too.
Absolutely. Well, it has been fantastic this evening. Thank you so
Thank
much for your
you.
time. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks. Sorry if I monologued a bit. I tend to do that.
I love it. I mean, I like to get to, I want to hear what artists have to say, and wherever they want to go with that. I just really enjoy that. It's great for me. So
Well, I like people who listen because it means I can talk more. So just kidding. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
take care, and I hope to see you here in June. And the new album is Working Woman.
Yeah.
Please get it, gracepettis.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you get all the information there, and get it wherever you get your albums. You have this on vinyl. Will it be on vinyl?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the first time ever that a Grace record will be on vinyl, and the pre-orders are actually being shipped early. It's kind of a thing that we've started doing, so they're starting to pop up on socials. So you can order it early, and yeah, It's on every place where fine digital music is sold as well. Streamed, whatever your thing. Compact disc, we've got it all, you know?
Excellent, excellent, very accessible. Have a great evening and best wishes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye bye.